Welcome to the show. This is the Monthly Meta. We are talking about what's changing, what's new, what's interesting in the world of sales development, things that you found on Reddit, LinkedIn, anywhere. The reason we started doing this is Gray and I do a one-on-one weekly, and it usually turns itself into a podcast. And I think Gray actually had the idea that, hey, we should turn this into a podcast itself and actually just, you and I can have a regular check-in and then save all the good stuff where we talk sales development, what's new, what's changing on a podcast and hit record. So I'm really excited to have this. Gray, welcome to the show. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, so I guess this like the monthly meta kind of episode, or whatever you want to call it. I have this theory, because even in sales development for a while, you probably have it too, that there's like a meta in sales development. And if calls seem to be really effective in a month, not only is your own internal SDR team like, hey, everyone, let's start making calls because it's really working right now for whatever reason, you'll start to see it in LinkedIn. So if you're following lots of sales development influencers on LinkedIn, they'll start talking about calls being effective and how calls are going for them. And then as more people see that, more people start making calls, all of a sudden calls aren't very effective. Because you're always you don't compete against your competitors' SDRs. You compete against every SDR in the world, really trying to get someone's attention. So there's like this meta, and it's always interesting to track it. You notice it pop up in the subreddit, the sales subreddit. You'll notice it obviously popping up on LinkedIn. And then here at Predictable Overview, we're lucky enough we have 20 plus companies that we work with providing outsourced SDRs. And so we can kind of see that as well across like multiple industries. And it all kind of shifts in the same way slowly. And what's been popping up a lot lately, at least in the last month or so, last few weeks, is really around like cold call dispositions are really interesting. And like
before we jump into the cold call disposition piece, I like the idea of the monthly meta. I think what resonates to me is if you think about competitive sports when you say the word meta, I instantly think like video game meta. Like I follow.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah,
totally. And I'm like, okay, so like you understand what the normal strategies are. And one of the ways to get good at any of these video games or sports is to understand what the normal strategies are. And those people get good results, the players that could just play meta. But the ones that get the sort of outsized returns are the ones that understand the meta and understand how to break the meta. And so I think what's interesting here is I'm not sure that in sales development right now there is much attention on what is the monthly meta, right? Like you couldn't tell me what like the 6 most common strategies are. I think there are 30 different influencers that are probably saying similar, but maybe different things. And it's kind of, it cycles. And so this is what I'm excited about, is to talk about sort of on a monthly basis. You and I are going to do this and say, okay, what was interesting this month? What did we see that was changing? And how does that compare to the results that we're seeing with the team that we're running? And I think the interesting thing from our perspective that we can bring to this podcast to the audience is we're not just trying out tactics. We're not just a single SDR shop that has the most extreme product market fit in the world, and we get great response rates for everything. We have a variety of clients, ranging from tech to services to selling for ourselves. So we have the opportunity to compare how these are working across different industries, different product types, kind of similar to what we did with our outbound labs back in the day. This almost feels kind of like the reincarnation of that.
Yeah. I don't have any data on how call dispositions is working right now. That's a good point. There's no data around it. It's kind of like buzz almost about what's working, and what we're hearing from influencers.
So let's talk about when we say cold call dispositions. I love this idea. Talk to me about, what does it mean? Where did it come from? Where did you hear about it?
Yeah, cold call dispositions. If you're an SDR or an AE or any salesperson, probably pretty familiar with it. Basically, when you log a call in your CRM or your SEP, your sales engagement platform, like Outreach or something like that, you kind of have the option to log a disposition. And so there's a few out of the box dispositions. Some tools also have like disposition plus sentiment. Some don't. And so some of the out of box dispositions might be like connected unqualified, connected qualified, connected uninterested, not connected, left voicemail, gatekeeper. And so you're kind of just like logging a quick note on like what happened on that call. And so that helps kind of helps you when you're calling that person again, kind of understand what happened on the last call. But it also helps your manager when they're going through. The disposition is really supposed to be helpful for coaching, for SDR managers. That's really who cares about it the most. I'm sure if you're a one-person SDR and you don't have a manager, you're probably not logging dispositions every time because you're kind of keeping track of that on your own.
So I might challenge you on that, because I think, like you said, we're saving context of the call. And if I'm calling this person repeatedly, especially, I mean, if I'm doing a high volume approach where I'm just smiling and dialing, making 100 plus calls a day, no, definitely not. If I'm doing a more thoughtful approach, maybe account-based, maybe personalized, then absolutely I want to see, okay, what was that note that I left on the last call? Where did I get to? You know, did I bail on the opener? Did I make it through? And having that context saved in my sales engagement tool, whether it's Apollo, Sales Loft, Outreach, helps you kind of, you're stepping forward, and you kind of building that up so that you get a little bit further and further and further down the path every time. You're standing on the knowledge that you gained last time, as opposed to just, it's a fresh cold call every single time.
Yeah.
Probably won't make sense for, again, a higher volume approach, and nothing wrong with either. But I think just that's the piece that I've done in the past, where I was doing it in a phone book because I'm so old school. Well, or just old. Back in my day.
Yeah. Highlighted green mean positive connective when you're going through it. Green highlighter, yellow highlighter. Yeah.
Black means don't call again. I had like a mark for like, this person is actually dead, because the phone books were like, it was the BC Business like book of businesses from like 7 years ago that this guy I worked for had bought. This like, actually, it was like the yellow pages, but it was just businesses with the owner's name and phone number and stuff like that. Anyway, called Dispositions. So starting with the top of the funnel, and almost, it sounds like you're almost treating every pickup like a Salesforce opportunity would, with different stages of the opportunity, because you want to see for each cold call opportunity how far down the pipeline you made it.
Yeah, basically. That's basically what a disposition is. And so for a really long time, most dispositions were kind of like out of the box what Outreach recommended, or Sales Loft, or you just Google dispositions and there's tons of free resources. Like HubSpot gives you what their best dispositions are. So you just copy and paste those and you just ask the SDRs or your AEs to log those dispositions. But there's some buzz. Shout out Max on LinkedIn, who I saw this a lot from, around like cold call funnels. This isn't like a new idea. It's been around for a while. But what's interesting is he's mapping his cold call funnel into dispositions. And that's sort of a unique take. I haven't seen that before, and it's actually kind of smart. Excited to run an experiment with our SDRs to like, hey, let's try that and see if it makes the SDR managers job better, if it makes the SDRs better. And basically what it's doing is saying, if you have a cold call funnel, you have like your intro. And so you have disposition that says intro. And then maybe, most people I think are using permission-based right now, but the next disposition that you have would be like value prop. And then maybe it's objection handle, and then it's booked meeting. If you're an SDI, that's ultimately the goal of every call. And so those would be your actual dispositions, your only dispositions. Maybe you have gatekeeper at the top or no answer or whatever. But what that really lets you do as a manager, instead of just saying, hey, I've got connected positive, connected neutral, connected negative, and I'm going to read through all these, like listen in on all these connected calls. And sometimes these calls are 2 minutes, sometimes they're 8 minutes, sometimes they're 10 seconds. You're wasting a ton of time to figure out like, what's the pattern for this SDR? Because you can't just listen to 500 cold calls and critique every single one and send that SDR a giant essay and all the things they're doing wrong. You kind of have to look for like one kind of thing, what kind of pattern that they're doing that they can fix or change.
What is the highest impact piece of feedback you can give right now?
Yeah, exactly. And so if you can map these dispositions, that what you're actually doing is you're seeing your conversion rate through the cold call funnel and where they're falling off. So if you have an SDI that has a 10% opener to, what was the next one I said, value prop, conversion rate, you can be like, hey, for every 10 people you call, only one person gets you through the opener. So now you know, hey, I'm going to talk to this SDR about their opener and how to fix it. And now I can listen to a bunch of these calls and see what's going wrong. So you can kind of present that data to the SDR and say like, hey, this is what's causing your slowdown. It's, it might be really obvious saying, hey, it's the opener, but when you're an SDR in the grind of it, in the trenches, part of what being a good SDR manager is showing kind of that obvious data and just presenting it to the SDR and letting them come to their own conclusions. And so you can do that really easily with cold call funnels.
And I think the value in a coach in any circumstance is that third party perspective of being able to look at the holistic and say, okay, this is the situation. This is the diagnosis of the reason why we are not hitting, X goal and so to be able to offer that clarity of thought, I think this is super helpful because I think when I was in a sales management role, how many cold calls was I listening to? Not enough, not many, to be honest. Yeah. And when I was doing it, like I was managing AEs and SDRs and inbound SDR as well as the founder CEO here. And so I didn't have tons of time. So I've never been a full-time dedicated sales manager. I have been a founder CEO with the sales management responsibilities, which is very, 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 very different than being a VP of sales or dedicated any sales leadership role. When I was doing it, I was doing call reviews with the AEs, but I would get them to bring me their best call, their worst call, their weirdest call, any call where they wanted feedback. And I was doing the same with the SDRs, which is good if you have a strong relationship with your SDRs. And it also assumes that the SDRs can self-diagnose where the biggest problem is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the thing that I was doing wrong, or maybe not necessarily doing wrong, but something that I could have done a better job of or will do a better job of next time is having something like this that allows you to kind of at a glance diagnose where they're failing in their cold call process.
Totally. Yeah. And it's good for self-diagnosis as well. Like just seeing a bunch of calls failed at connected neutral and not become meetings, it doesn't really add much value other than telling you what your connect rate is. And I guess if you're a decent SDR manager, you can kind of say, well, it's not the opener because I guess they're having a conversation. So that's really interesting. And honestly, dispositions companies and I've seen this before and I've definitely been guilty of this. You start adding dispositions and then now after all an SDR is just scrolling through 20 dispositions to kind of figure out which one it was, which is gatekeeper, not to phone tree, gatekeeper passed me to phone tree, but voicemail. And so you just kind of start building up these dispositions. So this keeps it really succinct. It's only 6 or 7 dispositions really. And then just really, 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 really clean. So yeah, we're going to try it.
Clear. It's super clear of in the parallel that is really resonating for me is when we implemented customer verifiable outcomes to advance from one stage in our opportunity pipeline to the next. So if an opportunity was in solution validation, the rep had to be able to articulate to me why do nothing was off the table for the customer. That's a customer verifiable outcome. Now I could probably I'm not going to go talk to that rep or to that customer, but they've had the conversation.
Yeah.
The important piece that I wanted to focus in on here is the clarity. If all of your SDRs are using your call dispositions in different ways, all this data is going to be gobbledygook. It's all going to be wasted effort. It's not going to be helpful. Mm-hmm. If when you make them this clear, I lost it in the opener. I lost it in the discovery. I lost it in the qualification. I lost it going, asking for the meeting, whatever they are, that allows you to, one, it's super simple for all your SDRs to fill out. 2, now you're going to have the same call disposition process across all SDRs. And 3, it's going to give you the better data for your SDRs to see it and for the SDR manager, VP sales or sales manager to go in and be able to understand that. So I really like treating each cold call as a mini opportunity.
Yeah. And so we'll kind of cool. And we'll take a couple SDRs and a couple clients and A/B test it against those SDRs and against other clients. And we'll see some anecdotal feedback and some quantitative feedback, what was good and if they liked it, if they didn't like it. So I also think calling and dispositions is kind of popular right now because of Trellis. So
what's Trellis?
Trellis just came out of YCOM. They are an AI cold call coach, basically. It's a Chrome extension. I think it's free right now. So go download it and shout out Trellis. And they have integrations with Outreach and SalesLoft. It's all super easy to get going on it. But actually what it does is it listens in on your cold calls and it kind of tells you like your meeting signal. It's like a book a meeting-o-meter. And if it goes from red to green, it says, hey, you should ask for a meeting now. Not really sure how it works. I think it's based on how much conversation they've been having. But also it tells you how fast you're talking. So it'll tell you if you're talking too fast like this, like me right now, almost all the time. And I'm sure it's constantly saying, slow down, slow down. Or if you're talking way too slow, it's going to tell you monotonous, like change it up. Really cool. It'll transcribe your call, which is cool. And it also, what's really cool is it like listens for objections. So just like Gong does when you're on a Zoom call and you're an AE, Trellis does that on a cold call on all the major SCPs, I shouldn't say everyone, but all the major SCPs, all the major CRMs have a pretty easy integration with it. And so if someone says, hey, I don't have the budget for this, it actually pops up with their out of the box budget objection. Yeah, it's pretty slick. So it's helpful. If you're an AE and you're using Gong, you're like, man, I wish I could have this on every cold call. Trellis is there. And the cool thing as well, you can go back and change your objections. So you can kind of type in the objections you want it to look for. You can change those. And it'd be exciting to see what these guys do because they're brand new. So there is just kind of basic functionality there. Seems to work pretty well. And then I know that I've been following Trellis a little bit and they've got a bunch of, announcements about some really cool new features coming, like automatically logging dispositions. Like how freaking cool would that be if you had your dispositions and you had this AI bot that could tell you, you lost that on the opener, you lost that on discovery, you lost that on the close. So pretty slick. It's one of the most exciting cold calling things I've seen since Orem, I think.
That's TRELLUS.ai for those that were Googling around and couldn't track it down.
Yeah. It's funny on this sales subreddit, anybody who posted something like their own tool or anything like that usually gets, downvoted to oblivion. Yeah, it gets shut down. People are like, I can't believe you're doing this. People are kind of harsh about it, but Trellis posted, everyone's like, this is the coolest thing ever. It has that like, hey, we're a scrappy little startup. We built this cool little thing. It's free. Give it a shot. So that's where I originally saw it there. Yeah. But I think sort of that Max and his team there and kind of them shouting about all these cold call funnels and how good they are. Plus with Trellis, you're starting to see buzz with a lot of the influencers talking about dispositions and cold calling in general. And we've actually seen in our SDRs quite a bit of calls, meetings booked coming from cold calling right now. So that'll be interesting to see going forward.
What would you say is the split right now between cold call, cold email?
Obviously totally different. It's hard to say with one, we have so many clients, but I think we're probably like 40% of our meetings around there coming from cold calling.
Nice.
Around that, which is a lot. Pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually
I know
a little bit about LinkedIn.
Some teams that are much lower.
Yeah, we're actually in a LinkedIn slump. Email's been doing well. LinkedIn, phone's been doing well, but LinkedIn for us has been a bit of a slump lately. So that's interesting because LinkedIn's usually a pretty steady meeting booker.
I can tell you why. I'll just show you my LinkedIn inbox, and the volume there has picked up like bananas.
Really?
In the last 2 months, it's been insane. And I think another reason why LinkedIn is our LinkedIn effectiveness for everybody is going down across the board is I won't share my screen because I have tons of messages in there. But they now have a focused inbox and another inbox.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And I get so many people that are like, if I see a cold LinkedIn outreach, I just hit right click, or not right click, but the 3 buttons, move to other. And I have so many in there every day, at least 3 to 5, 10 messages in that other inbox every day. And like, it's been a bit of a game changer for me on LinkedIn because I hated my LinkedIn inbox because it's a mix of like people I want to talk to.
Notoriously bad. You have to go and mark everybody in red so that it pops back up for you after you send the message.
Totally. Yeah. I still do that for like the people that I want to like, I got to follow up on this. I got to follow up on that. I do that in my inbox. But now with this other tab, I just like, if I see it, I don't even look at it sometimes because there's just so much in there. And usually the context is in LinkedIn, I've gone from it being I spent my whole life as a salesperson. So it's always been a way to connect with new customers. More recently, it's been a way for customers to contact me. And so I'm going in there because I got a notification, because I'm trying to reply to something. And then when I'm in the middle of that workflow, seeing 30 people message me. And when I'm on there and I'm talking to somebody, having 6 other people on LinkedIn go, ding, 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 ding.
Mhm.
And like, now I just can't keep LinkedIn in open anymore,
Yeah.
because if I have, I don't know if you've
Your
ever had
little
30
green
tabs
light and
open.
sales nav goes on, right? Your little green light and sales nav goes on. Now all those SDRs are browsing to like, oh, this guy's online now on LinkedIn. Better give him a quick follow up message, which is, if you're not doing that, SDRs look for that little green message, little green dot that says that person's online.
Totally. Is that just a sales nav thing? Like, I don't have sales nav right now, and I can see your green dot, but is this just like
I'm
a
so
filter?
used to just being on sales nav all the time. Yeah, it's probably just a LinkedIn thing. LinkedIn sales nav, I get confused between the two.
I'm old school. I don't like sales nav.
Sacrilege, honestly.
I love my Boolean search. Because I think I'd used LinkedIn long enough when Sales Nav came out that I'd been using it for a long time. I had my process and it changed the way everything looked. And so I had to like relearn it. And at that point, I was getting more out of sales. I was less
Yeah.
and less involved in sales on a day-to-day basis. And so it's never been it wasn't the relevant version of LinkedIn when I was using it, because there were all these other ways around that you didn't have to pay $150 a month for.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair.
Cool. Gray, this was fun. I like keeping this one short and sweet.
Yeah.
Would love to hear from everybody in the audience listening in. What would you like? Is there anything that you've seen in the last month that you think is going to have a strong impact on sales development? What are you seeing? Cold calls, cold emails, new tools. Send it to me, my first name with 2 L's at predictablerevenue.com. Love to hear from you. Gray, thanks for coming on, and we'll do this again next month. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
All right. See you next week, everybody. Next month.